The world of martial arts has seen many legends, but none have cast a shadow as long, as deep, or as influential as Bruce Lee. He was more than just a fighter. He was a whirlwind of energy, a philosopher in constant motion, and a man who seemed to defy the very physical limits of human capability. He moved with a grace that felt supernatural, and he spoke with a wisdom that transcended his young age. But on the humid evening of July 20th, 1973, that whirlwind suddenly and inexplicably stopped. The dragon was gone, leaving behind a legacy that would change global cinema forever, and a mystery that would haunt his fans and his family for decades to come. Even today, more than 50 years after that fateful night, the question remains hanging in the air. What really happened in that small apartment in Hong Kong? How does a man at the absolute peak of physical fitness, a man who treated his body like a high-performance machine, simply vanish from the world of the living? To understand the end, we must first understand the man, the pressures he faced, and the incredible intensity with which he lived every single second of his 32 years. Bruce Lee was born in the hour and the year of the dragon. From the very beginning, his life was a bridge between two worlds. Growing up in Hong Kong, he was a restless child, often getting into street fights and seeking out the guidance of the legendary Ip Man to learn the art of Wing Chun. But Bruce was not just a brawler. He was a dancer, a poet, and a deep thinker. When he moved back to America with only $100 in his pocket, he wasn't just looking for fame. He was looking to prove that the human spirit had no boundaries. He faced intense challenges in Hollywood, was told he wasn't Western enough to lead a show, and saw his ideas taken by others. Yet, he never broke. He channeled that frustration into his training, developing his own philosophy. The way of the intercepting fist. By the early months of 1973, Bruce was finally on the verge of the global breakthrough he had dreamed of. He was working at a feverish, almost frantic pace on Enter the Dragon. But the weight of this ambition was immense. He was the star, the fight choreographer, and the unofficial director for many scenes. He was known to work 18-hour days, often skipping meals entirely. He was pushing his body to maintain a physical form that was almost non-existent in terms of body fat. Friends noted that he had become increasingly moody and high-strung. He was a man who knew he was standing on the edge of greatness, and he was terrified of falling short. The first major warning sign that his body was reaching its limit came on May 10, 1973. It was a stiflingly hot day in Hong Kong. Bruce was inside a cramped, poorly ventilated dubbing room working on the voice tracks for his upcoming movie. The air conditioning had been turned off to keep the audio clean. Suddenly, Bruce began to feel dizzy. He walked out of the room to catch his breath and collapsed. He began to shiver violently, and his body went into a state of shock. He was rushed to the hospital in a state of confusion. The doctors found that his brain had begun to swell due to a buildup of fluid. They treated him with medication to reduce the pressure, and remarkably, Bruce's recovery was swift. Within days, he was back to his usual self, telling his worried wife, Linda, that he felt fine. However, his physical appearance was changing. He was losing weight rapidly. He looked lean, perhaps dangerously so, with his muscles standing out against his skin in a way that looked almost skeletal. His body was sending him a message, but the dragon was too focused on his mission to listen. Now, let us walk through the final day in detail. July 20th, 1973. The atmosphere in Hong Kong was heavy with the summer heat. Bruce spent the morning at his home, working on the script for his next project, Game of Death. He was excited, full of ideas. Around 2 p.m., Raymond Chow, his longtime producer and friend, arrived at Bruce's house. They spent a couple of hours discussing the business of the movie, the international release, and their hopes for the future. At around 4 p.m., Bruce and Raymond drove together to the home of Betty Ting Pei. Betty was a popular actress and a close friend of Bruce. The three of them sat in her living room, continuing their script discussions. According to those involved, the atmosphere was professional and productive. They were planning for the next chapters of their lives, unaware that the clock was ticking down on Bruce's final hours. At around 7 p.m., Raymond Chow left the apartment to attend a dinner meeting, intending for Bruce and Betty to join him later. Shortly after Chow left, Bruce began to complain of a severe, throbbing headache. It wasn't just a typical ache, it was a pain that forced him to stop talking. Betty Ting Pei, seeing his distress, offered him a tablet called Equagesic. This was a very common painkiller at the time, something you could get with a prescription that contained aspirin and a mild relaxant. Bruce had taken similar medications before without any issues. He swallowed the pill and told Betty he needed to lie down for a short nap. He went into her bedroom seeking a quiet place to escape the pain and the heat. When Raymond Chow called the apartment around 8 p.m. to see why they hadn't arrived for dinner, Betty told him Bruce was still sleeping. Chow called again at 9 p.m., and this time Betty went to wake him. She found Bruce lying on the bed looking peaceful, but he didn't respond to her voice. She tried to shake him, but his body was limp. Panic began to set in. She called Raymond Chow, who rushed back to the apartment. Chow himself tried to wake Bruce, but there was no reaction. A doctor was summoned to the apartment, and for several frantic minutes he attempted to find any sign of life. When he failed, he realized the situation was grave. An ambulance was called, and Bruce Lee was carried out of the apartment as a crowd began to gather in the streets. He was rushed to Queen Elizabeth Hospital, despite the efforts of the emergency room staff who tried everything they could to bring him back. The announcement was made at 11:30 p.m. Bruce Lee was dead. The news hit the world like an earthquake. In Hong Kong, the shock was so profound that it felt like the city had stopped breathing. Thousands of people lined the streets for his funeral, weeping for a hero they thought was invincible. How could the man who represented the absolute peak of human strength be defeated so easily? The official autopsy report pointed to a conclusion that many found hard to believe: death by misadventure. The medical examiners found that Bruce's brain had swollen significantly, and the pressure had simply become too much for his body to handle. The official explanation was that Bruce had suffered an extremely rare reaction to the painkiller he had taken. It was described as a 1-in-a-million freak accident. For the authorities, the case was closed, but for a public that saw Bruce Lee as a superhuman figure, this explanation was far too simple. This is where the legends and the conspiracy theories began to take root. The rumors started almost immediately. Some claimed that Bruce had been killed by secret martial arts societies who were angry that he was teaching Chinese secrets to the world. They spoke of a death touch, a strike that could kill a man days or weeks after it was delivered. Others looked toward the criminal underworld, suggesting that Bruce had crossed the wrong people and had been poisoned. Then there was the darker talk of a family curse. People pointed to the fact that Bruce's father had been deeply superstitious, and they whispered that a dark shadow followed the Lee family. This theory took on a chilling quality 20 years later when Bruce's son, Brandon Lee, died in a tragic and highly unusual accident on a movie set. To many, it seemed as though the family was haunted by a debt that had to be paid in blood. However, if we look past the stories of assassins and curses, modern researchers have found a more grounded explanation. In recent years, specialists have looked closely at Bruce's lifestyle during those final months. He was drinking massive amounts of water and juice, he was under extreme stress, and he was taking various medications for his back and his headaches. They suggest that Bruce's body simply lost its ability to balance the fluids he was taking in. This led to the swelling in his brain that ultimately took his life. It wasn't a secret strike or a curse. It was a tragic collapse of a body that had been pushed too hard for too long. Yet, even with a scientific explanation, the tragedy remains. Bruce Lee passed away just 3 weeks before Enter the Dragon was released. He never saw himself become the biggest star in the world. He never knew that he had single-handedly changed the way the world viewed Asian culture, proving that strength and charisma have no borders. Bruce Lee once said that the key to immortality is living a life worth remembering. By that definition, Bruce Lee is immortal. We don't remember him just for the mystery of how he died. We remember him for the incredible fire with which he lived. He lived with a passion that inspired millions to take up martial arts, to study philosophy, and to believe in themselves. Bruce Lee once said that the key to immortality is living a life worth remembering. By that definition, Bruce Lee is immortal. We don't remember him just for the mystery of how he died. We remember him for the incredible fire with which he lived. He lived with a passion that inspired millions to take up martial arts, to study philosophy, and to believe in themselves. As we look back on the life of the dragon, we realize that his death was merely a final chapter in a much larger story. While the how of his death might be debated by doctors, the why of his life is clear to all of us. He was a man who burned so brightly that he changed the world, even if he was only here for a short time. The silence of that apartment in Hong Kong has been replaced by the roar of his influence. Every martial arts movie, every athlete who pushes their limits, and every person who tries to be themselves owes a debt to Bruce Lee. He didn't just teach us how to fight, he taught us how to live with purpose. The dragon may have left the stage, but his spirit remains, as powerful and as relevant as ever. He taught us to be like water, to be fluid, to be adaptable, and to be unstoppable.